Want to make sure I've got some captions going as well. Hmm, Okay, I'm just gonna make sure I've got captions. There we go. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. I'm Devin Waugh, the instruction librarian for NC Live, and today we're going to talk about a practical, repeatable way to support faculty using NC Live resources. So what I'm calling it is faculty toolkits. So the goal for this session is to help you walk away with kind of a clear understanding of what a faculty toolkit might look like, why it's effective, and how you can create these in a way that's easy for faculty to drop directly into their courses and learning management system. Before we jump in, here's what I hope you'll be able to do by the end of today's session. So by the end of this, I hope you'll be able to identify some NC Live resources that can kind of be packaged into course-ready faculty toolkits across multiple disciplines, create links, embed videos and other content into your campus learning management system, and any other sort of custom assets like um, custom clips from Films on Demand or maps from Social Explorer that faculty can then easily integrate into their instance of Canva or Blackboard or Schoology, whatever learning management system your campus uses. And then just the opportunity to really develop a repeatable workflow for collaborating with your students, curate tailored collections of ebooks, data tools, and multimedia that support their teaching goals. So this is really about building something that's useful, reusable, and easy to implement. So here's how we'll spend our time in this hour. I'll show you three pre-made toolkit examples so you can see kind of what this looks like in practice and what I started to put together. It's by no means like the finished product, but it's kind of the genesis of how you might start off with something like this. We'll look at, I'll also point out some resources that I think are particularly good for a learning management system integration, meaning that they can embed easily or link pretty quickly and cleanly into an LMS. And then we'll talk about how to use this toolkit approach for faculty outreach, including language and some timing strategies that can work well. And so to understand why toolkits are an effective approach, it helps to start with the reality that faculty are working in. Um, Faculty are stretched thin. They're juggling course prep, assignment design, learning management system management, admin duties, potentially mentoring grad students, and then their own research. And so I think often faculty, especially when it comes to integrating certain like library resources and tools into the learning management system, they're not, that's like an add-on as that's nice to have, but it's not always something that is top of mind because their focus might be more on that initial syllabus and pulling certain texts and materials that they have or textbooks that they've used for a while. And so it's really kind of on the library staff to suggest and curate and offer suggestions about library databases that can provide a more meaningful discussion in the classroom, that can allow for use of data analysis skills and kind of stretch students' thinking. And so I think it's really helpful to think through the struggles that they're facing and ways that library resources can save them time, but also enrich the instruction that they're doing in the classroom. So, what is a faculty toolkit? It is a small reusable set of teaching ready materials. It's designed to plug directly into a course or learning management system, and it's really meant to be a time-saving solution. So the key idea here is it's not a huge research guide or an entire course redesign. It's just something that a faculty member can adopt quickly with minimal format. So with that toolkit approach, I really tried to make sure that it's less, three resources or fewer. And really that minimal friction piece is what makes it work. If it's something that immediately they can copy the link and put into Canvas or into Blackboard, then it kind of helps them not have to deal with navigating multiple windows and doing some of that research themselves. Um, so that's where it's really kind of reducing that friction and helping faculty adopt resources in a way that feels realistic with their schedules and their demands in their roles. Um, Here's what it can look like. I kind of tried to think about it as what sort of content areas that I can pull in. So as I go through these, um, I want you to kind of listen for a pattern. So toolkits really work best when they connect directly to assignments and learning outcomes that already exist. Uh, so showing reading here. I really like you can start off with ebooks and articles being the obvious choice, pulling in titles across the NC Live collection, going into ebook central, using our homegrown collection, which has unlimited simultaneous use. So there's no wait limits, no holds or checkouts. And a lot of titles from UNC Press and Duke University Press are there for history, for social sciences. Um, and then pulling in streaming video, I think this can be really useful, especially as libraries may not have as much physical media, turning to tools like Films on Demand, where you can not only find a documentary that you might want to stream for a class, but also the ability to create custom clips and playlists, I think helps faculty kind of get a little bit more um, personalization to using that tool and really thinking through how can I introduce a short clip before um, the next class discussion on this particular topic and do a little bit more of a flipped classroom approach. Custom maps. So I really want to highlight in this, you have the ability to make maps within Social Explorer, but Social Explorer is a fantastic database that you can copy and paste existing materials that they have, existing maps, and then just plop them into a learning management system or into a web page, and really have students use those to think through the census data that might relate to a course, but also the ability to visualize data in a way that can apply to so many different skill sets. Um, Another thing to look at is we have a lot of databases that have topic pages that kind of summarize maybe a historic time period or a literary movement. We also have databases that have these great kind of high level reports that bring in popular and scholarly resources and other kind of summary tools that exist in some of these academic resources. So just with my first example is nursing, because it's a great example of a discipline where faculty value trusted summaries for care and evidence-based resources and materials that students can cite very easily. And that the nice thing about pulling from the NC Live collection is that students can then access these materials after they graduate. So because we serve both public and academic libraries in North Carolina, all of the databases that I show you, students will then be able to use this content later. And so in this toolkit, I'm just going to show what this looks like. Everybody can see my screen here. But I start off with kind of some basic language about what CINAHL is. And then one feature that I think is particularly useful for faculty, which is there are quick lessons and evidence-based care sheets, and those provide really nice overviews of conditions, procedures, and treatments, which are good for developing care plans and kind of what things look like in practice in the field without overwhelming students. They're written in plain language. So one example that I bring in is hydration and how hydration is an important care practice for older adults. And then I bring in a quick lesson in lung cancer for older adults as an example. So I also share the nursing video collection and films on demand. I'll put a couple of different clips and documentaries that are good for introducing in a course. But I'll start on our A to Z list of databases and just jump to CINAHL so you can see where to find these materials. I'm going to go to resources. And then I'm going to click C and jump to CINAHL. And it's asking me to log in again, but that's okay. All right. And so what you might have noticed is in the last year, CINAHL has had a refresh of its platform because it is an EBSCO product. But one thing that you can do is a lot of the filters that you had with the previous version are all down here. So one thing that you can do is take a look at publication type. And that's where you can find care plan, but also the evidence-based care sheets and the quick lessons. So I'm just going to do the filter for those publication types. I'm not going to put any keywords in so you can see the ones that are available. And then I could even look at what's been published in the last 12 months. And there are 88 new care sheets and quick lessons. But I'm going to pull up here. Let's see. I'm going to pull up osteoporosis as an example, the quick lesson. So it looks a little bit confusing, but what I'm going to do is go to online full text. And I can see this document here where I have the table of contents on the right, looking at risk factors. I can jump to signs and symptoms, treatment goals, and then there's obviously references at the bottom. But you have a couple of different options for sharing this. So you can create a OneDrive link or Google Drive link. You can also copy the proxy link so that it creates a direct pathway for faculty to access this instead of being dropped on the homepage of CINAHL. And then you can obviously download this full text as a PDF. And then there are a couple of different options here. You do have the ability to translate this into different languages. This is helpful for faculty to know if they have students where English may not be their first language and they want to change it into their preferred language and back to English. I'm going to jump in. You can listen to the audio version of this as well. And you have additional accessibility support in here. So if any of your students find that this isn't accessible with a screen reader or they want it in a more accessible format, they can put their name and email and their preferred format and have it sent to them. You have the ability to highlight text and get that audio version, which is great. I'm going to go back into my search results. And I can also see here that it's organized these at the top, so I can just look at evidence-based care sheets, and those look very similar to quick lesson. So I want to look at this evidence-based care sheet. I just click online full text, and it looks very similar. It's written in this kind of clear outline, so what we know, what we can do, and then additional references with recent research. Now I'm jumping back into my slides. I'm just going to show here the another toolkit that I'm going to show you is for an anthropology class on Native American societies. Um, this is something that's also pulled from existing courses in the UNC system. So I am creating these faculty toolkits based on what are actual courses and course catalogs across the system. But if I were to make a faculty toolkit for this particular class, I would pull in the Indigenous Peoples of North America collection and the ability to link to content. There is the ability to integrate that collection in a learning management system like Canvas or Blackboard. And then I'd pull in relevant titles from eBook Central, JSTOR. We have some open access ebooks, as well as some open access journals, and then titles from the Homegrown collection, as well as video content from Films on Demand. And then the third example that I'll show you is for an intro to sociology class on family and society, and how a faculty toolkit might include template language for describing Social Explorer, and then examples of pre-made maps and presentations that you can immediately drop into a unit or discussion before a class. And then I'll share kind of a list of some relevant titles from eBook Central and JSTOR, and then some reports from CQ Researcher that I think would be good for a course like this. So just an overview of the three toolkits that I'll cover. Jumping back into the first example, I think one of the things that's particularly useful to highlight here is the content in CINAHL is not just journal articles, but there are summaries in these quick lessons and care sheets that align well with assignments in class, case studies, and research questions where students need like quick, credible overviews. Faculty benefit is really clear. You're getting trusted summaries, you're getting citation-ready content, and you're getting citations that are also from the last few years. It's really important in healthcare research to have the latest research. And so it really meets students at a level where they might be kind of getting used to reading healthcare research. And so having these high level overviews and outlines really meets them where they are. With the nursing video collection in Films on Demand, we do have a direct link to this collection in our A to Z list of databases. And something that you can add to your A to Z list of databases on your library's websites. But this is really a strong component of the toolkit because it can help faculty support different learning styles. It can support flipped classroom instruction. Um, you can have faculty integrate this collection into pre-class viewing assignments. It allows for reinforcement of key concepts in the classroom, and it can also be a nice way to create discussion prompts with short clips. Video also helps faculty who want students to engage with that course content outside of a lecture format and don't want to create all of that content themselves. And so in this collection, there are hundreds of different videos, and you can drill down into different areas of practice. This platform has gone through a bit of a refresh, so I'm just going to review what this looks like. And so here, I'm going to go through and look at nursing, current concepts and practices, video collection. And with all of the content from Films on Demand, you have public performance rights. So these can be used in the classroom. Faculty can use this as part of any sort of programming outside of the classroom as well. There's no limitations on how this can be shared in an educational context. So I have almost 800 videos in this collection. What you'll see with the info-based refresh is that it is linking to other NC Live databases like CINAHL and JSTOR. and then also some other um, library databases that NC State subscribes to since I'm logged in as NC State. I have this alphabetical list, but I can switch it and look at newest to oldest. And then I can add in different filters. So if I want to look at particular subject areas and I just want to look at nursing and allied health, and I want to look at, let's see here, maybe I want a medium length video. It's giving me 200 different results. And then I can look here and scroll through. And this is a 16-minute video on principles of pharmacology that was published last year. And then I can see that it's already segmented. I have a transcript that I can download, and then faculty can use this potentially using an AI tool like Notebook LM and creating comprehension questions or discussion questions by downloading that transcript because you have the text, the script of the video there. And then you can create a custom link, proxied link by going to share and then copying that. You can also use the embed if you want to embed this video into the LMS. You can copy that frame and then put it directly into the editor of a particular unit or assignment in the learning management system. So you have a few different options for linking. And I'm going to jump back in. You can add in different keywords, like if you want to add in and look at anything related to patient care related to heart issues and conditions. You can scroll through here and see some different examples. I can also add in a particular condition, like let's say I want to look at content related to diabetes, and then I can pull in different examples in here. There are also podcast episodes in this collection. If you want to just focus on that content, you can by limiting the filters and then just adding in podcast episodes. So that's just kind of the basics of how you might add in key terms and share from this collection. Now, by copying or embedding a frame of these videos, they can be added directly into courses. In the slides, I've linked to the instructions for integrating this content into Canvas. Films on Demand has also developed their own instructions. But this is an example of a video on math vitals for nurses that can be used as review or introduction to a unit in the learning management system. If you're having any challenges with creating links to this content, always know that you can email the NC Live Help Desk and we can help you with troubleshooting that at any point. But this core collection we got earlier this year, and we're already seeing faculty across the UNC system integrating this into OER as well as in their courses because they want to make sure that their students are able to access this content after they graduate. Any questions about the nursing example before I jump into the anthropology toolkit? All right. So this is an example where it is a social science course that can align with a variety of different NC Live databases. not only for research assignments, but also for primary source analysis. Um, we're lucky in that we have a couple of different primary source collections, um, and one in particular that lines up really well with anthropology of Native American societies. Um, but you can also find when you search across our collection and pull out certain ebooks and streaming video, is they can be great for providing ethnographic case studies, looking at particular tribes, and finding some of that historical context across different regions of the United States. Faculty benefit here because they're gaining access to curated authoritative sources. It's citation-ready content that supports student research and instruction and provides kind of scaffolding for primary source analysis. One thing that I really think is helpful with the Indigenous Peoples of North America collection is that it's helpful because students often struggle with like where to start when they're doing primary source analysis, um, especially in disciplines where they might be brand new to the historical context, and terminology is really a key part of that as well. And so the Indigenous Peoples of North America collection is really a strong anchor resource for this toolkit. If you're going to share this with faculty, it really helps to describe this as a very focused, high-value collection. It supports both instruction and student exploration across dozens and dozens of archives from the United States and Canada. It really reduces the time that faculty have to spend with hunting for credible materials, um, potentially on sites with paywalls. This is all an academic database that they already have access to. And you can also emphasize that this helps students engage with course content in a way that's more structured than open web searching. So there are materials from the 18th century that are related to exploration of the Americas. Um, there are archival materials such as letters to the Association of American Indian Affairs, um, asking for sovereignty. This particular example on the left-hand side is related to school segregation of the Lumbee tribe in North Carolina schools in the 60s, so right after Brown versus Board of Ed. And it's kind of related to lobbying for desegregation in these schools. There are photo collections in here. There are a couple, predominantly of tribes in the Great Plains region of the United States. There's also an entire collection related to the um, Osage murders. And if you are familiar with Killers of the Flower Moon, the book, and then the film adaptation, there's an entire collection related to news articles, transcripts, interviews. So if there's any sort of study related to literary nonfiction or related to that movie or the book, you can tie in the content there. But there's also a lot related to Wounded Knee and sovereignty and issues of advocacy and activism in Native American communities, particularly around the 1970s and the midpoint of the 20th century. There's alternative newspapers, especially alternative newspapers written by Native Americans that you have access to in this collection. So it's not just a tool for history of Native American societies in the 19th century, but it's up until the 20th and into the 21st century as well. There is an LMS guide that Gail has that I've linked here and some more support documentation. You can kind of see in the screenshot what full integration would look like with Canvas. And so that's linking in that screenshot to Gale primary sources, but you could have it so that it's linking to Gale Indigenous Peoples of North America collection within a course so that students have that direct link and they can actually search in that interface in Canvas instead of being dropped off onto the library website. I've linked to some reproducible libguides that you can kind of um, reuse some of that content. And then you can also share individual links to particular archival materials in this collection. So different approaches to how you want to link to content. Um, but I'm going to jump into the collection now. All right, so Indigenous peoples of North Carolina, or not North Carolina, North America. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There are a couple of ways that you can search across this collection if you just wanted to find materials related to a particular Native American tribe. You can use the search bar. Let's say I wanted to find materials related to the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. I can see all the content types here and particular letters, as well as newspaper articles here. So this is a newspaper article on the Lumbee tribe from the New York Times from 1970 that is showing how desegregation in schools is affecting the Lumbee people in Lumberton. At the time, the Bureau of Native American Affairs didn't recognize Lumbees as a tribe. This happened actually recently in the last year. But if I wanted to link to this article as part of the course, I would just click Get Link and I can copy it here. I have quick citation information. I can also send this as a Google Drive or OneDrive link if that makes sense for my campus and email it quickly. You can also download this as a PDF if you wanted to share it that way. You can see the table of contents for this publication that's kind of bringing in different articles and is part of the newspaper collection in this database. I'm going to go back and just show you all. You can look through the manuscripts, but you can also search in the collections here. That allows you to limit by document type, language, and then source library and content type. So let's say I wanted to look at photograph collections. I click photograph, and then I can see the Moravian mission among the Indians of North America, or the Native Americans, which there's Moravian history in North Carolina. So I could go through and explore and look at some of the content here from around the 18th century. I'm going to go back and then I can always switch my content type, but I can also look in this photograph collection from Oklahoma Territory in the 1890s. If I wanted to look at the particular photographs themselves, I click View All Documents, and then I can scroll through and look at these digitized photos. I'm going to go through and look at collections again. You do have the census roll of the Cherokee Native Americans east of the Mississippi from 1835. That's a content collection that's also available in Heritage Quest, but it is in here too, if you wanted to go through and zoom in. I can also take a look here at different biographies if I wanted to. You can also look at source library. So if I wanted to focus specifically on content that is from the National Archives, I can click apply and go through here. If I want to limit to a particular time period, let's say I want to search for North Carolina, I can then limit by publication date. So this part I'm going to say is before. I want to see everything related to North Carolina before 1850. And I can see here the content that's available. If I click on these travel guides or travel logs, I can go through and explore. But this isn't necessarily something that would be about modern Native American societies, just an example of how you can use keywords and publication dates to narrow down this collection beyond just looking at the high-level overview of what collections exist in this resource. Now I'm going to show a couple of different things here. I'm going to jump into my faculty toolkit and show you I have this template language of just like how to explain what this collection is and how faculty can use it. I've listed out the time periods that it covers. So it's going through the colonization of period, looking at early US policy on Native Americans, but also related to relocation, so urban relocation of Native American tribes, land claims, and then going into mid-20th century sovereignty and other contemporary issues. I've pulled out two ebooks from eBook Central that I think would be a good fit. I haven't included the proxied link to these resources because obviously attendees have each campus has a different proxy prefix. So I'm just including the DOI links here. And then I've included a couple of different relevant ebooks from JSTOR. There's quite a bit of open access anthropology ebooks and journals in our JSTOR collection. We do not have the full JSTOR collection. We just have a limited number. I think it's around 50 open access journals and then several hundred ebooks. And so just including a couple of different examples that would be good. And then some examples from the homegrown collection as well. With Films on Demand, I pulled out a couple of different examples. There are full-length documentaries related to Native American sovereignty that are in the Films on Demand collection. There's also the PBS series Native America. And the fourth episode in that second season is related to language and keeping languages alive in Native communities. And then Indian by Birth is a documentary that was shot in North Carolina that by NC State University that's available in this collection as well. I'll be sure to add a couple of different streaming video that I think are relevant. But let's say if I were to explore and pull out different examples in this collection, I'm going to put in Native American as my keyword. And I can see here, I'll look at filters, and then let's say I want to find full video, update my results. And I can also limit by a particular producer. But here's where I can see that Language is Life episode. And I can jump to certain clips or segments of this episode and share them out. You can log in with a librarian level account and do the custom clipping. But if I'm just going to share this with faculty quickly, I would just copy in this video, which includes the NC State ID for Films on Demand. But that same iframe is available here too. And then you can see suggestions at the bottom here. So that's kind of how I would structure pulling in different examples and really finding an anchor resource for a course, just so that faculty don't always think in databases like we do, but just pulling out some of that content and really thinking through how it can benefit them and make core skills that they're trying to help students develop easier to do can be really useful. I'm going to jump into that third example of the sociology toolkit, which is also pulled from existing courses across the UNC system. With this example, it's specifically on family and society. So one thing that I tried to do is pull out like demographic trends, sociology ebooks, and then research from reports in CQ Researcher, as well as maps and visualizations that you can use from Social Explorer. So it's really asking students to move beyond an article they might read in class to looking at demographic trends using data visualizations in Social Explorer. So faculty then really benefit because they're reliable data visualizations that students can use in coursework. They can edit them themselves. So there's a lot of customization that's available and allows them to see in a very interactive way change over time in different key data sources like the census and the American Community Survey. So this is an example of a lecture launcher in Social Explorer that would be related to this course, where it's giving me context on the left-hand side, and then I have this split screen view of unmarried partner households from the census from 2000, and the same data from the American Community Survey from 2018 with 5-year estimates. What those 5-year estimates do is it's projecting kind of what the changes will look like from 2018 up into 2023. And then I can see on the left-hand side, I have a discussion question in that bottom left corner, which areas of the country have relatively higher percentages of cohabitating couple households in 2000 and 2018 compared to the rest of the country, which areas have remained relatively unchanged from 2000 to 2018. And that's a nice, quick thing that faculty can put in their assignments or as an activity before a class, and then as an opening question. All right, let's look at that lecture launcher and talk through the questions that it's including, and really getting students to play around with this tool that they can use in other courses. And so in Social Explorer, under the Teach and Learn section, there are so many different subject areas that these lecture launchers cover. But I'm going to scroll down to sociology and pull up that example that I've included here. You can see the author for it. I'm going to click start and then zoom in a little bit. I can zoom in. I'm clicking auto adjust as I zoom because then it allows me to see that data sort of updated on the right-hand side, and then I'm auto adjusting on the left-hand side here. And I can see some of that change over time. If I wanted to focus just on a particular region, I have this split screen view. And I can see that change over 18 years. And then I can hover over individual counties. I can click Save As and make this my own so that I can edit it as I see fit. Like, let's say I wanted to look at the census tract level. I can do that here and click Auto Adjust. Oh, because it can't be done for this view. It's all right. And then I can edit this lecture launcher as I want to. So let's say I wanted to share this, I can embed, so I can copy this iframe and put it in a learning management system. I can link to this view. It doesn't require proxy information, so I can just have this quick direct link. And then I can add collaborators to this. So let's say if I wanted to share this as part of a group in a class project, you can easily invite people to share in any map that you make in Social Explorer, which is great, or any map that you adapt in this tool. You can also export this image. Because this is a dual view, it's going to ask me to export either the map on the left or the map on the right. But I can also export this as a PowerPoint slide deck if I wanted to. Escape. And then here I also have the ability to edit this project if I wanted to. This is part of their kind of story view. So I'm not going to edit this right now. I'm going to go back in here and share. You have this teach and learn section where you have various different subject areas covered. There's also their training modules. So if you want faculty to really use this database across a course, they have these great modules showing the types of visualizations that are available, the layer library, how to pull in comparison views, and change the geography level and do a real deep dive. Another thing that I think is great about this platform is these data snaps. So these aren't multiple slides that you would navigate through. They're just one map that you can share as a starting point. The same sharing capabilities, links, copying the embed code, but you also have the ability to save this as your own and adapt it as you see fit. So let's say I wanted to do this as unit 1 map. I can include a description and then very easily link and embed this in a learning management system. And so you can create your own maps. You can create your own reports and share them out through this resource, or story, which is that sort of almost presentation PowerPoint view. And I can add in new slides if I wanted to. But really, if I'm trying to introduce this to faculty, I'm not trying to show them things that they need to make from scratch. I want to show them what they can immediately drop into any course. Business, public health, political science. There's so many different pre-made materials that you can share with this resource, which is what I want to stress. And then I've included their LibGuides that they have for various subjects where you can pull in descriptions and examples of using this resource across different classes. And then that integration with the LMS is really easy with this resource. So that's kind of why I think that's lends itself so nicely. And of course, it's just one of my favorite examples of very low friction integration with a learning management system. All you have to do is copy that link or then embed code, and then the map becomes part of the course content. So really the selling point here is like, it is that easy with this resource. And it's really especially effective for faculty who want students to engage with real data, but don't have time to teach a complex data tool from scratch. If you're just showing what already exists and allowing them to play around, you're giving them an accessible entry point. Um, Other resources that are good for learning management system integration. So I do want to pull up the last couple of things from that third faculty toolkit before we get into these other resources. So I'm going into that third faculty toolkit. I have my template language, some example uses, and then linking to some of those pre-made maps. I pulled in some sociology ebooks from eBook Central that I think would be a good fit. Again, just sharing the DOI instead of a proxied link for our purposes. And then I pulled in a title from JSTOR. And then I brought in a report from CQ Researcher. This is the last resource from the faculty toolkit that I really think is kind of an unsung hero. Just exiting from some of these views. There we go. All right. So what I like about these reports, I jump back up to CQ Researcher. And then log in. For your own campus, if you're making these faculty toolkits, you'll easily be able to just copy the content and include that proxied link. But the reason that I'm sharing this report before I get into just a few other resources is these are great for, pull in topic page, and then this report on US childcare from last year. These are great for especially like first year, second year students, um, because they combine scholarly research with popular sources like news articles. It gives you a good overview that you can link to, providing some historical context, policy information, discussion questions that faculty can include as part of their lecture or lesson plan, interactive timelines, and then you can see with that bibliography how it's organized by content area. So there's more books that they can use for developing their syllabus, recent articles related to the topic, policy reports, and then some more context here, as well as the full footnotes. So as part of that ACRL framework and having students do source evaluation, it's nice to pull in a resource like this because they can see that balance and mix of popular and scholarly research that's being used to give them an overview and really bring them up to speed on a topic like childcare that would fit within a course like this. Now, I want to share some resources that are good for LMS integration. So they integrate really easily. PrepStep is one of them. Um, Learning Express Library is like the public library version of this resource, but with PrepStep, you do have the ability to integrate practice sets and tests within your learning management system. It takes a little bit of work to do this, but if you have any questions about it, feel free to email me and I can put you in touch with our EBSCO contacts to kick off that process. But it works, this full LMS integration works with Canvas, Blackboard, Brightspace, and Schoology. What's nice is once you have it built in, faculty can then assign practice sets to their classes. So it allows for a little bit of investment in the beginning for setup, but then once they're able to integrate it, Then it has an automated scoring feature. It allows students to receive feedback and then faculty to see how students are doing with the practice set. Um, and so for faculty, this resource can function like an assessment ready add-on that doesn't require them to create any new quizzes or assessments from scratch. They can just pull in what already exists in Prep Step. And so you have the ability not only to do practice sets related to professional licensure exams, um, or any skill building modules or tutorials. But in Prep Step, they have a whole section of college success skills where they have AI literacy micro lessons, they have tutorials for information literacy and research skills that faculty can then assign to their classes. So it allows for a really more direct pathway to this content. And it helps align with broader institutional goals like soft skills, career readiness, um, literacy, AI literacy development. And it's really on the faculty's part. Once it's set up, it's a lot more low maintenance for them as if they're already able to use it within their learning management system and embed content really quickly and easily. And so I really think this is a great tool for that. Um, It can also be shared with advising centers, any sort of tutoring programs on campus, because then they're able to use it as well. But in a course context, I think this is great for built-in review and assessment in the classroom. So Gale Literature Resource Center is a fantastic toolkit resource for humanities courses, especially any writing heavy or reading heavy classes. You can explore full works in this platform. They've also added these fantastic primary source sets that pull in archival material for different texts. I've listed out a couple on the next slide, but you have so many different content types in here that you can share really easily in a learning management system. You have literary work overviews, you have criticism, you have the primary sources, you've got news, magazine articles, podcast episodes, biographies of authors. And I really think the overviews are good when you're introducing, faculty are introducing a different time period, a different literary movement, um, a new work that's kind of maybe even sort of bringing in the themes of a class together. And you have a lot of really simple tools for research and sharing. So you have the ability to make highlights and notes, but you also have Google Drive and OneDrive integration with this tool, which is great for sharing, turning an article from this database into a shareable doc that everybody in class can work on or small groups can work on. And you have the ability to have voiceover of the text and translation options for accessibility purposes. So here are some of the primary source and historical document sets in Gale Literature Resource Center. These are, you can see this example for Hal, the poem by Allen Ginsberg from the Beat Generation, and then some multimedia. So Allen Ginsberg reads Hal, as well as some photographs, um, some articles and recordings of artists related to this poem. Um, but these allow for a deeper understanding of works and some richer classroom discussion. Instead of having faculty pull all these different resources themselves, it's all within these curated sets that are made by faculty across the United States. So some examples of titles that have these sets are Brave New World, Hamlet, Frankenstein, Jane Eyre, and The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. So there's some contemporary titles that have these primary source sets as well. But it's just really good for faculty who want to teach a work in context, but don't want to assemble all those supplemental materials themselves. Another toolkit-friendly feature of this resource are the topic pages. These are good for giving students background info and then connecting them to relevant scholarly articles or topics in this resource. So I've included the example of the Pre-Raphaelites, which were a movement and a group in Victorian England. It gives me some background info about kind of the art and writing and poetry that these artists are doing and some of their contemporaries, as well as some related topics. And so in this platform, I'm just going to show this real quick. I know we're a little bit over time. Sorry about that. So I am going to look at Gale Literature Resource Center. And see here some featured works. There are full texts of certain books and poems in this platform, which you can search for. I'm just going to show all the different topic pages that they have here. So many different subjects covered. Related to culture and time period. You know, if I wanted to link to the example of ghosts and Shakespeare's work, I have this proxy link that I can then drop into a learning management system. I see an overview that I can then change into send to Google Drive or OneDrive. I can change the font size of this. I can hear the audio version. I can have this translated to a different language if I wanted to. And then I have suggested literary criticism on the right-hand side, as well as subject areas and further reading. So it allows for exploration within the platform and some suggested other topic pages as well. I can do a person search. I'm going to jump back onto that homepage and just show here those featured topics. And then I'm going to look here at the example of looking at how just to pull up the primary source and document sets here. I can see some articles, and then I can see the professor that made this primary source document set. But if you want to look and do an advanced search, you can see here, if I click primary sources and literary works, and let's say I want to do this related to Shakespeare. I can then see some of these suggested topic pages, as well as the document type in here. And then the name of work. Like, let's say I wanted to look particularly at Hamlet. I can pull in examples here. I'm also going to share for the Underground Railroad as another example where I could pull in primary sources related to the text itself. I will include the full list of primary source sets in my faculty toolkit Google Docs so that you all know which ones are available for which titles in Gale Literature Resource Center. But that's just kind of an overview. You can do that work search as well if you wanted to search by a particular author or nationality or ethnicity. Like, let's say you wanted to find all of the Argentinian authors in this collection. You can see that list here and jump directly to whatever the work is. This is an example of a Borges short story that I can find some content related to. Now, putting this toolkit approach into practice, I really think it helps to kind of think through what faculty are interested in, especially if you've already built relationships. Just highlighting how this can save them sign up for this or any of their things. It's just lead with what they care about, time and outcomes, um, and connecting it to the end result of stronger student work, better use of scholarly research and the learning management system themselves, and then time saved on timing can kind of be everything with this. So it's often helpful to share out or make these connections at new faculty orientations a few weeks before the fall or spring semester as they're starting to do some of this curriculum design, or even over the summer. Um, and really sharing these toolkits or kind of materials at department meetings um, can really be helpful. When you're sharing emails, focus on kind of that plug and play materials, the time that's saved, and even if possible, peer examples. So let's say you tried this approach with a faculty member that's also in that department. You can kind of say, so and so has used this Gale Literature Resource Center in their Shakespeare class last semester, and they found it really helpful because it kind of helps faculty realize if their peers are using this, that they can also benefit from it as well. I've linked to a webinar that was led by April Hines, a subject librarian at the University of Florida for us in August, where she kind of talks through in more detail some of these approaches for cold emailing, but also building relationships with faculty, where you can talk through the value of your services, your role as librarians on campus, and really match it to their needs. So rather than reuse any advice that April has shared, I highly recommend checking out this webinar as well, where she goes into more detail about different strategies that you can use for outreach on campus and connecting with faculty. So as we wrap up, I know we're a little bit over time, but I just have a question for the chat. How do you anticipate using this approach on your campus? Are there particular resources in this session that jump out that you really want to share with faculty that you didn't know about beforehand? Yeah, that's a great idea, Amanda, of sharing, getting Prep Step added to your Blackboard learning management system and highlighting it with faculty. Um, as I mentioned, if you need any help with that, um, get in touch with me, email our help desk, and we can put you in touch with the right EBSCO contacts for getting that integration set up. Jennifer sharing, we'll be switching to Canvas, and it's a good time to have some of these strategies ready. Yes, UNC system schools are also switching over to Canvas. So knowing that you have the ability to do some of this stuff can be particularly helpful. All right. Well, it's good to hear that this has sparked a couple of different ideas. I do want to share, just as a quick end to this, is we do have a new usage stats portal. So if you're logged in as your library, you can see your top 5 resources and compare usage. I suggest after this webinar in the next few weeks, take a look at your library's usage of some of these materials. And when you start a partnership or integration in your learning management system with particular courses, see how that uh, see how that usage changes over time. And so this is an example of Wake Tech Community College's use of Gale Literature Resource Center. And you can see some of these peaks and valleys over the last year where it's clear that this resource was integrated into a course or faculty are using it and they're sharing it with students. And you can see some of that increased usage around particular months or maybe tied to particular units. Any questions?